Sixers, Raptors, Saturday night. It's either 7:30 or 8 o'clock. We've got great series. Round 2 is going to be phenomenal. I don't know. Keith Smith, let me ask you. Boston, Milwaukee, Philly, Toronto, Golden State, Houston, possibly, Portland, and either Denver or San Antonio. How are you ranking the second-round series in terms of interest?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, this is one of the all-time best second rounds I think we've ever had. I would probably put Warriors-Rockets at the top of that list for just, as far as being casual fans and just people who are interested. That should just be a fantastic series. We saw those two teams go right down to the wire last season, so that should be, really good. And then after that, it's really who you're a fan of, who you're more interested in out of Boston, Milwaukee, Philadelphia, Toronto. And then, unfortunately, that means Portland and whoever they get is probably going to be fourth, but that's still going to be a great series, too. So this is easily the best second round I can remember, ever in the NBA.
All right, let's start with Philly last night. Just utter domination of the Nets. The game, I was there last night, Keith. It was never close. It was not even discussed after 14-0. The Nets just never got into it. Kenny Atkinson said after the game, they smothered us. The intensity was just, he actually said this is one of the first times all season long that they had no fight in them. I know Toronto essentially did the same thing to Orlando, but when you look at Philly, I thought their defensive intensity and the defensive level they showed the last couple of games may have been something different from them than we've seen from them, virtually all year.
Yeah, absolutely. They last night especially, that's the best I've ever seen this group defend since they came together, a couple months back at the trade deadline. And that was, really good to see. They were very connected defensively. Each guy handled his guy, but then they also moved and did things together as a unit, which was really great to see. And then you've got kind of Joel Embiid seemed to be moving better last night, and that makes a big difference on the defensive end. And seeing them play like that really gives you a lot of hope, because they're going to have to defend like that in order to be able to continue to win in the playoffs. And what we're looking at now with them in Toronto is this is probably going to be, if you like a ton of points and offensive basketball, you're probably not going to get it, because these two teams really get after it defensively.
Yeah, and I thought Ben Simmons, I know he is a very polarizing guy. Defensively, he is going to be an interesting, like the matchups here with this Toronto, they like to go Kawhi on Ben, but now, the Raptors are 3-21. Brett Brown talked about it last night, Keith. He said, I know the math has not worked out for us in terms of our record, 3-21, but he said, those teams are gone. We have not the Sixers Raptors never met with the Tobias Harris Sixers. So how does this Sixer group match up with this Raptor group? Because I find these matchups to be very intriguing.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because one of the first things we always do is we go back to how did this season go and what were things like, and you can't do that with these two, because as you said, they've never really played. There was only, I want to say, 2 games with Jimmy Butler there, and then no games with Harris. Toronto didn't have Gasol, so really you're going to throw that out and look at how they've been playing. Now, I think the toughest matchup for Philly, like it always is point guards. Who's going to defend Kyle Lowry, who's going to get after him, and then on the flip side, who's going to defend, who is Lowry going to defend on that side? Are they going to put him on J.J. Redick and ask him to chase him around the perimeter? What are we going to do there? So it's going to be really interesting to see, how those two teams match up. I think there's going to be a lot of cross matches. The one thing that we do know is it's going to be Embiid versus Gasol and Gasol versus Embiid on the other end. And that's a matchup that Toronto really needs Marc Gasol to hold his own in order to give them a chance, to shut down the Philadelphia offense.
Yeah, I know Embiid, his points per has been historical, best of all time, better than Michael Jordan, better than Russell Westbrook, better than Giannis is doing right now. He only played 20 minutes last night. His minutes have been limited. The Sixers are going to need more of Embiid, but I was going to ask you, how does Toronto go about trying to defend Joel Embiid?
Yeah, they're going to put Gasol on him and play him one-on-one as much as possible. When he's out of the game, they'll go with Serge Ibaka. And in those situations, they may send some doubles, they may send some help at him. One of the things that I think you'll look for, especially when Gasol is out of the game, is as soon as Embiid puts the ball on the floor, that's when they'll send a double at him. He is still prone to turnovers and coughing the ball up. He's not a great passer, especially when he's down in the post. But beyond that, it's going to be a lot of Marc Gasol. I would be surprised if Joel Embiid plays more than a handful of minutes each game, 2 or 3, without Gasol being on the roster with him.
Talking with Keith Smith, Yahoo NBA, here on the Sports Bash, at Keith Smith NBA on Twitter. How about Ben Simmons? They have taken him out with Kawhi Leonard. Do you anticipate that being the strategy, or do they now have to select what they're going to do with Kawhi a little bit more closely with Jimmy Butler and Tobias Harris also here?
Yeah, it does change things having Butler and Harris there. It's going to make it a little bit of a different look. I do think that they'll continue to play it the way they want to with Kawhi. In a lot of ways, Ben Simmons, it's like cutting the head off the snake. You want to be able to stop their point of attack. He's the guy who gets everything going for them. And they also have really good defenders in Siakam and Green, and I think they're fine with those two guys really covering either guy. I think Toronto will do a lot of things where they'll switch off the ball and make things uncomfortable. But for Philadelphia, they can't have the Ben Simmons who shows up and gets 2 points and 5 assists, and you really don't know he's out there at all. Because if that's the case, that just makes it far too difficult to beat a really talented Toronto team. They need him to be consistent, from the jump and aggressive. And if he plays like he did in some of these Nets games, they're going to have a really good chance. If not, it's going to make it really, really hard for them to beat Toronto.
We're talking with Keith Smith more on this Sixers-Nets series, and then ahead to the Sixers and Raptors. We'll get into Boston, Milwaukee, Golden State, and it all. Round 2 matchups almost set. The East ones are. Philly, they also have Jimmy Butler. They have Ben Simmons playing defense like he did last night. If you're Brett Brown, Keith Smith, how do you go about defending the Raptors? And I guess the first 2 guys you look at is Siakam and Kawhi Leonard. What are the Philly matchups there?
Yeah, I think you're going to put Tobias Harris on Siakam. There's just not another great cover for him. He could probably cover Kawhi, but that's not exactly the best matchup. So I think you'll see a mix of it be Butler and Simmons on Kawhi, because I think that's what they want to do. I think they might put Simmons on Kyle Lowry to start games just to put a little bit of size on him. Lowry's not the fastest guy in the world, and that's what you worry about with Simmons, being so big, is keeping up with those really quick point guards. And then that allows Butler to be on Leonard, and I think that's the way they'll open the game, and we'll see how it looks. But I think what you're mostly going to see is they're going to throw different looks at Kawhi. Mm-hmm. It's something that Orlando just wasn't equipped to do. They pretty much played him straight up with Aaron Gordon the entire time. And what you generally want to do is you want to throw, a guy's so good offensively, you'll have your primary defender, but you want to throw some different looks at him and make him have to think and wonder where is it coming from. And then I would not also be surprised if they send a lot of help, especially when he gets in the paint or he's, working down along the baseline. Send some help, force him to give up the ball and move it to somebody else.
Yeah, Keith, so what's that mean for Ben Simmons defensively? I mean, because he has really turned it up a notch. That could be the wild card of this series, having Ben Simmons available, not have to defend Kawhi and or Siakam, which means he could really be a difference maker if he doesn't have to exert so much energy on those 2 guys.
Yeah, absolutely. What was great to see, especially in the last couple of games against Brooklyn, was Simmons took on the challenge of defending D'Angelo Russell. He really did a nice job against Russell, which is a big thing for them, because they need to be able to defend these point guards. You can't ask Jimmy Butler to do it. Not at this point in his career. He hasn't defended point guards for several years. He can do it on switches, sure, but he can't be covering those guys all the time. You also can't ask J.J. Redick to do it. He's not capable of that. So that's
I do think Redick is going to be an interesting guy that Toronto will go after, because I don't see a good matchup for him anywhere.
Yeah, your best bet is to put him on Danny Green and hope that Danny Green hangs out mostly on the perimeter, because if Toronto starts trying to put the ball in Green's hands to do things off the move or in the post, that's a win for Philly. I always go back to it's like when teams used to post Isaiah Thomas with the Celtics, with these point guards who never post up. that's a win, because now you're going and asking guys, do something you never do. So that's going to be, I think that's probably the best matchup Redick will have in these playoffs as far as defending a guy who is, more similar to him, if anything. Doesn't work quite as through the maze of screens Redick does, but he mostly hangs out around the perimeter.
Keith Smith, NBA right now on the Sports Best. It's Sixers, Raptors, Saturday night. It's either going to be 7:30 or 8 o'clock. That depends on what happens in this Nuggets series that is going on tomorrow night. Nuggets and the Spurs are 3-2. So 7:30 or 8 o'clock in that one. Big problem for the Sixers. Is it a big problem? Depth bench. Raptors certainly have the advantage there.
Yeah, it can be. It's less a problem in the playoffs because you're only playing every other day at most, and teams generally amp their starters' minutes up. But where it'll really come up as a problem is if Embiid gets in foul trouble, or he's tired, or he's at all nicked up and can't go, or if really anybody else gets in those types of situations, because they just don't have the guys they can go to say, all right, hey, yeah, we'll go to this guy, we'll go to him and feel really good about it. And now it sounds like Mike Scott's got a heel injury that he's dealing with, so that's going to be something that we're going to have to, watch and wait for by the weekend. Hopefully it'll clear up by then. But yeah, they just don't have the depth. And Toronto, they know what they're going to get out of their bench guys. Van Vliet, Powell, Ibaka, they're going to come in and give them good minutes. If OG Anunoby can come back, that's another guy that they can throw out there, especially defensively against Butler or Harris or Simmons. So it's going to be really interesting to see how Philadelphia goes about it. I think their best bet's going to be ask the starters to play absolutely as much as they can without wearing them out completely for, hopefully what is an Eastern Conference Finals run.
Let me ask you about Boban and the backup center spot. Is he they've kind of been using him in matchup situations. They felt that he was a good matchup for Brooklyn, but is he a good matchup getting 15 to 18 against Toronto?
Yeah, I think they're going to have to, because I don't think they want to go to John Bolden or Amir Johnson or anybody like that. The challenge is going to be if those minutes are coming against Serge Ibaka. Ibaka at this point does a lot of his work around the perimeter, so you're going to be asking Boban to hang out away from the basket. So there's just not a great matchup for him. My guess is Embiid probably pushes around 35 to 40 minutes a game, so you're really asking Boban only somewhere between 10 and 15 minutes, and that's probably okay. You can probably scheme around that and figure it out, but that is definitely going to be something to watch, because if he can't keep up with the Ibaka out on the perimeter, now you're really looking at, you're going to have to either go small or go to Jonah Bolden or maybe even Amir Johnson. You dig him out and go that route. Yeah,
and I know Bolden had some issues in the minutes that he got against the Brooklyn Nets. This is a total different challenge, though. The Brooklyn Nets are a team that lives by the three, kind of dies by the three. They're very small. What is the identity of this Toronto team? Because I'll tell you what, you're going to see a different level of defensive intensity, that's for sure.
Yeah, you just hit it. Defense, that's their identity. They get after it. They are long, they're quick. Even when they make mistakes, because they're so long and quick, they're able to recover, and you don't even notice things there. They in the Orlando series, it was interesting. I get to see them up close here in Orlando for a couple games. There was games where they lost Magic players, just lost containment on them. But because they're so long and fast, they were able to get back and disrupt plays. Kawhi Leonard does things as a defender, both on and off the ball, that I've never seen before. Just his instincts, his ability, his athleticism, and his size is just ridiculous for that. So that's going to be a challenge there. And then they really give Kawhi the ball and say, go get it done for us. Make plays, get us buckets, and he's really grown into that role quite comfortably to the point where he's now, not only is he an okay scorer or anything like that, he's a really great individual scorer and playmaker for the Raptors.
Keith, you looked at the Raptors. You said they played Orlando down there, and they blew them out last night. I mean, the series, they got the first one, Orlando did. Much like the Sixers, they both dropped the first one. Kenny Atkinson said last night that the defensive level of intensity was just on another level, and they could never really rebound from that. And that went back to game two from the second half on. He really stressed that their defense was on another level. What changed in the Raptor Magic series that opened up the Raptors' eyes after a game one loss?
Yeah, it was almost the exact same thing. They amped things up defensively, and Orlando just doesn't have the playmakers to to deal with that. They can't come back from that. That's too much of a challenge for them. They just don't have that kind of ability or individual talent to make those plays. So that's what Toronto did, as well as Toronto's execution offensively got great. And Orlando had some very unsustainable shooting as well. They went through a period where they were knocking down in that game one. They hit almost half of their 3-pointers and made all the big shots down the stretch, and that just wasn't sustainable. So now we're looking at it as it's kind of one of those things I always say: water finds its level, and it did in a big way.
I know that we're spending a lot of time on this particular series. I'm going to get to the Boston-Milwaukee here, but for your money, is Kawhi Leonard the best player in the East that's left in these playoffs? I mean, I guess entering the playoffs, but is he, of these four, is Kawhi Leonard still the best?
Yeah, I'd go with Giannis still. I think he is still the best player in the East, but that's, you're splitting hairs there. Kawhi is, he's very much the 1A to Giannis's 1, or, the 1B to the 1A, however you want to frame it. That's the thing that's just so exciting, is all four of these teams have their stars. They've got good rosters. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch these guys go at it and watch the superstars do their things as well.
All right, Giannis, obviously, and the Bucks, they're the 1 seed. They had no problems with Detroit. Is that a benefit to them, or do you think that might be a benefit to Boston to maybe sneak one on the road early?
Yeah, I think it could help the Celtics a little. Just not the 4 games. That part of it doesn't matter, right? They both won 4 games, so that's not going to be a big deal. But I think what could help the Celtics is the Bucks weren't even tested.
Right.
Any of those games. Game 4, maybe a little bit. It was somewhat close, but for the most part, this was just it was a walkover, and it was really Blake Griffin not healthy, so you expected it. And I think for the Celtics now, they're coming in feeling like, hey, we were at least tested in our game. We played against the Pacers team that really defends at a high level. They really made things ugly on us. They played it like a playoff series, where the Bucks just kind of walked through. So I think there's a chance Boston could, if they're going to get one on the road, I think the chance it'll be game 1, just because they're a little more playoff ready.
Marcus Smart back?
Yeah, we'll see. He's amping up the activity. It's I always wonder, whenever the teams start doing things like making players out there going through workouts, whether it be just a physical workout or an on-court workout, and the media is present, I always wonder why. What are we doing that for? In the last 2 days, the media's been there while Marcus Smart is going through things. Now, he's not going through anything full speed in that, but I do think there's a chance he gets back. He's not going to be back for the start of the series. That's just too much to ask, but I would say maybe, game 3, game 4, he's known to the field, really quickly in the past. He sounds like he's looking good physically. That now it's really starting to turn more into a pain management thing. So we'll see. I think there's a chance he gets back around the middle of the series, which is oddly how it played out last year in the first round when this team's back.
Yeah, I know. Boston started to kind of. You watch a lot more Boston than probably most of us listening. But they started to kind of – do you think that they kind of turned a corner in these playoffs, that this looks more like the Boston team we thought we were going to get for a large majority of the year?
Yeah, I want to definitely say yes. The one challenge with that is they've done this a couple times in the past, but I think what is really important to know with this group is now I think guys really know their roles. I think Brad Stevens has slotted guys in the spots that make sense. That guys are kind of doing their thing as far as they're making sure that they're playing their role. He's not pushing things, any one way. I think they use a lot of the regular season as experimentation to figure some things out and see, what they can and can't do as a group. And now we're really looking at it as, all right, this team is finally starting to put it together. And I think they are going to be tough, to deal with in the second half for Milwaukee. I think it's going to be a really good, close series.
Right. I was going to ask you, just on the surface, Boston, Milwaukee, how do those two teams match up? Because really, Milwaukee, I think, still as the best record, number 1 seed, they blow the doors off Detroit. I think people still don't know a whole heck of a lot about them other than Giannis is the MVP of the league potentially.
Yeah, and it's, with the Bucks, I think what's important there is they put together a system and a personnel that just fit perfectly around Antetokounmpo. It's a group where everybody spaces that floor. There's a ton of driving lanes for him. The guards are good. They really do miss Malcolm Brogdon. Now, it didn't show against the Pistons because the talent disparity is just so big. But Brogdon was really, really good for them. Gave them a secondary ball handler and playmaker along with Eric Bledsoe in the starting lineup. He was a 50, 40, 90 guy. So that's going to, just like Marcus Smart wasn't too missed against the Pacers for the Celtics, neither was Brogdon against the Pistons. And I think that is going to really matter now as we get into the second round. If one of those guys is able to get back earlier than the other one, that could make a really big difference for those two teams.
We got a couple series still left to go here in the West. Utah down 3-1, Clippers down 3-1. Either one extended tonight.
No, I don't think so. Whenever the home team goes back home for Game 5 with a 3-1 lead, I always favor them getting that win. So I think you're going to see the Warriors and Rockets take care of business. I think also both of them know they don't want to be having to play another game while the other one is sitting around, resting up and getting healthy. They want to be done with this thing tonight.
And then tomorrow, we got 3-2. It's one of the good series that we got in this first round, one of the few where someone got more than just one win. Denver, San Antonio. I'm a little surprised. I thought San Antonio would win the series. They got the wins in Denver. And then, it looked like they were in control of Game 3 and then lost that game, and Denver hasn't turned back since. So can San Antonio win 2 in a row, or does Denver close this out?
Yeah, I think San Antonio will win Game 6. They're at home, and I think they obviously can win Game 7. But I think the Nuggets will win it. I think what we've seen with Denver is they finally, we're kind of realizing. I think Paul Millsap is a guy who's owed a lot of credit for this. I think the Nuggets slowed things down and said, all right, let's not. They got a little out of control in a couple of those games against the Spurs and didn't look so good. I think now they're really, figuring it out. All right, let's play who we are. Let's be who we are. Let's be the really good team we've been all season, and not worry too much about, oh gosh, we're first time here and it's the Spurs and right late to the playoffs. So I think Denver's going to win, but I do think that series will go 7.
All right. I know by the time we talk next week, we will already have a couple of Sixers, Raptors, Bucks, Celtics under your belt. But preliminary pick by Keith Smith, who will be in the Eastern Conference Finals?
Yeah, I think the Raptors are going to get there. I think a home court advantage is going to make a big difference in that series. And then, Hart says Celtics can get there, but I'm not going to pick against the Bucks. So I think we're going to see Milwaukee, Toronto matching up in the Eastern Conference Finals.
All right, Keith Smith, Yahoo NBA. Follow him on Twitter at Keith Smith NBA. And, of course, tonight you got the 2 Western Conference games, Sixers, Raptors, 7:30 or 8 o'clock on Saturday night. Right here on 97.3 ESPN. Keith, I look forward to catching up next week, pal.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it.